In Colombia, the 9 trapped miners in Cundinamarca were rescued safe and sound. Railroad workers in the United Kingdom go on strike to demand fair wages to cope with rising inflation. And the Israeli army raided and shut down the headquarters of 6 Palestinian non-governmental organizations in the city of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Colombia's National Mining Agency reported on Thursday morning that the 9 workers trapped in the El Bosque mine, located in Lenguasaquia, Cundinamarca department, were rescued alive. According to a brief communication released through the entity's social networks, the miners are in good health conditions, receiving the corresponding medical attention. During the process, the rescuers communicated with the miners and sent them water through the air conduct. The workers were trapped after rock fell, which caused the obstruction of the mine exit, according to the information provided by the local civil defense. The Chilean Senate approved on Wednesday a new extension of the state of emergency in the south of the country. The Senate approved almost unanimously this Wednesday a new extension of the state of emergency in force since mid-May in the Araucania region and the provinces of Arauco and Biobío. Wednesday's was the 6th extension, and although senators almost unanimously supported the new request of the executive, there was criticism of a presumed political exhaustion of the measure, taking into account the way in which the government has applied it. Cuban forensic authorities report on Wednesday in a televised press conference about the results of the search and identification of the remains of the 14 missing firefighters who lost their lives fighting the oil depot blaze in the city of Matanzas. The Doctor of Sciences and President of the Cuban Society of Forensic Medicine, Jorge González Pérez, informed that the expert work was intense and the protocol established for the extreme cases, as was the case of Matanzas, was fulfilled to the maximum degree. He explained that it was a fire of great proportions and that the expert work had been concentrated around Tank 51. González Pérez also said that it is estimated that in the center of the fire there were more than 1,000 or 2,000 degrees Celsius. These, he said, are extreme conditions that make it impossible to identify the firefighters.
In this case, given that the remains found were subjected to high temperatures for a long time, it is not possible to apply the extraction of DNA. It is not possible, as stated by the Cuban experts and furthermore verified with consultations, that I understand that it was reported by the press that we have made consultations with the Ibero-American Network of Forensic Science, with European experts, and they all agree that it's impossible in those conditions. It is impossible to apply any forensic biology technique that can identify the remains.
And Cuba's President, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, decreed official mourning from 6 a.m. on August 18th to 12 a.m. on August 19th. During the period of the official mourning, the flag of the Lone Star must be hoisted at half-mast in public buildings and military institutions. Meanwhile, funeral honors will be held for the fallen in the fire at the Matanzas supertanker base. The tribute will take place at the Museum of the Firefighters of the city of Matanzas from 10 a.m. in the morning until 5 p.m. in the afternoon of the same day. During the day, the population will be able to express their feelings of pain and solidarity in the face of such a sensitive loss of human rights. Panamanian social organizations once again called for a demonstration on Thursday, asking for the government to comply with the agreements reached at the Unified Dialogue table. This protest takes place one day after the resumption of the Unified Table of Dialogue in Panamanian. According to the social leaders, some of the demands being discussed differ from the demands made by the Panamanian people. During the last negotiation session, the parties in the conflict addressed the issues of government corruption and the lack of transparency. In this context, the organizations denounced that the Panamanian government has been acting in a way that's subservient to the interests of the oligopolies and the private business sector. Strikes for better wages have multiplied this summer in the United Kingdom, and new strikes are expected at the end of August in the face of soaring inflation and plummeting purchasing power. The British unions RMT, TSSA and Unite have called a new strike of railway employees for this Thursday and Saturday, paralyzing for the moment the country's road network. The movement, which involves tens of thousands of workers, began in June and is the biggest strike in the sector in the last 30 years. Meanwhile, on Sunday, the stevedores unions at the port of Felixstowe, the largest cargo port in the country, will begin an 8-day strike, threatening to halt much of the freight traffic. Barcelona marked on Wednesday 5 years since the deadly terror attacks in the northeastern region of Catalonia that killed 16 people and injured over 120. Hundreds of people congregated at Las Ramblas, the popular tourist spot in the center of the city, for a ceremony presided by Regional President of Catalonia, Pere Aragonés, and Barcelona's Mayor Ada Colau, among other officials. The relatives of the attack's victims led flower wreaths at the Joan Miró mosque on Las Ramblas, the iconic three-line mall on which 16 people were killed and more than 120 others injured in the attacks, which were carried out by a zeal of the so-called Islamic State, a group. The victims were Spanish nationals, tourists from Europe, South America and Asia, and included several minors.
Yes, it grabbed me. It dragged me sideways, threw me over here, lifted me up, and I felt against the glass with my neck and head. I had all this glass on my arm, on my head. I was performing. I was performing on the day of the attack. There were some statues. We were moved further away, but we lived through the whole attack. Everyone was on the ground.
On Wednesday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg calls on the leaders of Serbia and Kosovo to show restraint and avoid violence. Likewise, NATO will increase its peacekeeping force in Kosovo if there is an escalation of tensions with neighboring Serbia.
It is the responsibility of all parties, particularly the officials from Belgrade and Pristina, to prevent escalation again. I call on all sides to show restraint and to avoid violence. NATO continues to monitor closely the situation on the ground. Our KFOR peacekeeping mission remains focused on its UN mandate. Should stability be jeopardized, KFOR stands ready to intervene.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. In Argentina, grass fires ravage grass and wetlands in the islands of Paraná, River Delta, north of Buenos Aires, destroying the environment and endangering health due to smoke. Grass fires ravage wetlands in the islands of Paraná River Delta. The outbreaks are said to have been started intentionally by farmers to clear the land, and due to the drought affecting the region, they are spreading rapidly. So far, 4 people have been arrested for the burning of the pastures. Meanwhile, the population of the neighboring town is suffering from intoxication and respiratory problems due to the intense smoke.
You can't breathe. Look, when I go for a walk, well, now there is no so much smell. But usually, yes, at night, you can't sleep at all.
We had a real bad time. You can't go outside. You get intoxicated. My family is asthmatic, and you can't even open the windows because it's horrible.
Multiple forest fires were affecting the territory of Portugal on Wednesday as the country prepares for a new heat wave in the coming days. Reports are coming in from a fire that is raging in the area of Caldas da Rainha, a city located some 90 kilometers north of the capital Lisbon. Meanwhile, several crews are trying to control a forest fire that has burned large extensions of pine forest in the Serra da Estrela National Park during the last 12 days. At the same time, Portuguese authorities announced on Wednesday that a firefighter had died after suffering a heart attack while fighting the blaze.
Unfortunately, we had that death suddenly. The spirit of the firefighters remains strong, certainly in pain but able to fight. You probably have witnessed the situation. We want to be sure that by tomorrow late morning we have it under control. It is currently an active and violent fire. It's burning eucalyptus. At a moment we have 108 vehicles, 422 firefighters and 6 aerial resources.
In New Zealand, hundreds of families had to be evacuated on Thursday due to flooding caused by torrential rains. More than 300 families from the South Island of New Zealand had to abandon their homes in the city of Nelson due to the worsening storms and the overflowing of the Marae River, while several localities had to declare a state of emergency in the midst of a storm in which more than 300 millimeters of rain fell in a few hours and caused damage to properties and infrastructure. The bad weather also affects the North Island, including Auckland, the country's most populated city, where trees have been reported to have fallen due to the combination of rain and strong winds.
What we've seen is 308 houses have had to be evacuated. That includes 10 due to a landslide, the rest due to flooding. And as it stands, 104 of those have been assessed today. We've met with the crews when they were out there. They're all working incredibly hard in difficult conditions. And I think it's credit to them that they've got through so many houses so quickly.
In China, at least 16 people were killed and 18 others were still missing on Thursday afternoon after a sudden storm in the west of the country triggered a landslide that diverted the river, and caused flooding in populated areas. Altogether, Wednesday night's disaster affected more than 6,000 people in 6 villages in Qinghai province, according to Chinese state media. Likewise, rescuers had found 18 of the reported missing people by early afternoon. China is facing heavy rains and floods in some parts of the country this summer and extreme heat and drought in other regions, and climate experts have described the heat and drought as the worst since records began 60 years ago. Three people died and dozens others were injured when a violent thunderstorm hit the French island of Corsica on Thursday morning. According to local authorities, one of the 12 people injured was hospitalized in a critical condition. The storm produced winds gusts of more than 136 miles per hour in some areas, as informed by the French National Weather Agency, and about 45,000 households were without power on Corsica, according to French electricity company. Rescue operations were taking place along the western coast of Corsica to help several grounded and wrecked ships, the French Maritime Authority for the Mediterranean Sea tweeted. After a summer of drought, heat waves and forest fires, violent storms have hit France and the neighboring countries in recent days. And at least 38 people were killed and dozens injured in Algeria as a result of forest fires in the north of the country. The latest civil protection report of the injured detailed that there were 41 people with respiratory difficulties and 4 with burns of varying degrees in South Akras, a city on the border with Tunisia. Local media reported that several roads were cut off as flames were burning near some cities in the country, while authorities deployed helicopters to contain the fires. The media also reported that inhabitants fled their homes in South Akras, from where some 350 inhabitants were evacuated due to the proximity of the blaze. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday morning, the Israeli army raided and shut down the headquarters of 6 Palestinian non-governmental organizations in the city of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Israeli forces searched and closed the premises of the NGO Al-Haq, the Bizan Research and Development Center, the Union of Palestinian Women's Committee, the International Children's Defense, the Union of Agricultural War Committees, and the Association for Human Rights and Support for Palestinian Prisoners. In addition, the offices of the Health War Committees were closed. The occupation army confirmed the closure of these entities after declaring them as terrorists in October 2021. These accusations have been rejected by the Palestinian authorities, by international organizations, and by the governments of many European countries. This Wednesday, a group of Palestinians held a tribute to the children killed by Israel during the latest bombing of the city of Gaza. Waving Palestinian flags and posters with faces of the murdered children, dozens of people gathered on Gaza Beach to hold a commemorative act and denounce the crimes of the State of Israel. Last August 5th, Israeli bombardments on the Palestinian coastal enclave killed 48 people, including 17 children, while injuring more than 300 people. In this context, human rights activists called for international protection for Palestinian civilians, especially children.
Today, this mural depicts the names of 17 of our martyred children. It is 100 meters long and the first Palestinian mural to be realized.
In Afghanistan, there are so far 21 dead and 33 wounded after a suicide bombing at a mosque in Kabul during the evening prayers on Wednesday. Among the dead was reportedly a prominent local cleric by the name of Mullah Amir Mohammad Kabuli, according to a Taliban official who spoke on condition of anonymity. While no organization has so far claimed responsibility for the attack, the local affiliate of the Islamic State, the group has stepped up attacks against the Taliban and civilians since the former insurgents seized power last August 15th, when U.S. and the NATO troops were in the final stages of withdrawing from the country.
It was evening prayer time, and I was attending the prayer with others when the explosion happened. It was a very powerful explosion inside the mosque. Around 25 people were martyred, and several others were wounded.
Kenyan President-elect William Ruto held a conference attended by members of his party and the press. The President-elect vows to tackle political tribalism and promises to promote a political culture where everybody can speak about everything they want and nobody is going to victimize them.
Tell the people of Kenya, we are having our democratic country back. And everybody can speak to everybody about everything in every way they want, and nobody is going to victimize them. We will be suggesting members of Kenya Kwanza to the transition committee. I think we are doing that today, so that the process of the transition can kick in and we can go towards concluding the matter of the election.
The government of Mali requested an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council to discuss the acts of aggression perpetrated by France against the nation. This was made known by Mali's foreign ministry through a letter addressed to the presidency of the Security Council headed by China. In the letter, the government of the African nation indicates that it reserves the right to self-defense in the event of continued violations of its sovereignty by the French forces after they reported irregular support to the extremist groups. In turn, Bamako pointed out the constant flights of the Paris forces within the nation's air borders, activities considered by the national government junta as espionage and attempts at intimidation. And this Wednesday, Indonesia held Independence Day celebrations beside the presidential palace in Jakarta. A cultural carnival is held in Indonesia to mark the 77th Independence Day celebrations. People wear colorful clothes and act in different themes to celebrate on the streets. Also, local officials, construction workers, and security officers attend a ceremony to celebrate Indonesia's Independence Day at ground zero of the country's proposed future capital city in Kalimantan on the island of Borneo.
We are holding the ceremony here with all the workers, mainly to take the spirit of the 77th Independence Day, to together strengthen our determination in building the new capital.
TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And now you can also follow us on TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which we will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.